It looks like it.
Okay. This meeting is called to order. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the May 10th meeting of the Douglas County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. My name is Pam Weegan, and I'm the chair of the CJCC. I want to pass on a bit of information regarding how we will conduct our meetings on Zoom. We ask that all members please turn on video if you have it. We ask that all members and presenters mute their line when not speaking. We ask that you please identify yourself each time you speak. And if you have public comment to make during the public comment section of the agenda, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom. Recordings of CJCC meetings are available on the CJCC website after each meeting. Our first agenda item today is announcements. Douglas County was recently selected to participate in the Pretrial Equity and Transformation Network. The network focuses on front-end criminal justice system strategies that improve racial equity, decrease the number of people booked into the jail, and decrease the length of stay pre-trial. We also were selected for the probation practice to reduce jail populations network, with a focus on seeking to reduce the use of jail as a response to violations of probation and to mitigate inequity in their use. These networks are part of the MacArthur Foundation Safety and Justice Challenge. Dr. Cravens, you had an announcement as well.
Yes, one more announcement. Douglas County has also been accepted to participate in a data science for social good project with Carnegie Mellon University. So over the course of the summer, 4 data scientists fellows will work with our county's data to build a model to predict individuals with very high risk of suicide, drug overdose, and mental health crisis. And then we'll get access to the code that they develop and run the models and prediction results, and we'll be able to continue to implement it and outreach those individuals and offer service to them, the people with the highest risk of suicide, overdose, and mental health crisis. And so this does have this potential to influence a lot of folks in the county, and we're happy to be a part of the program.
Thanks, Matt. Our next agenda item is the Treatment and Recovery Center update. Is Bob going to be taking that?
Bob said he was not going to join us. And so what I'm going to do is introduce Dr. Thompson, and then he will talk a little bit about the Treatment and Recovery Center. So, and I see Dr. Thompson is with us, so we're all set to go. So I just real quickly, Dr. George Thompson joined our project back in November of 21 as the medical director for the Treatment and Recovery Center. Dr. Thompson comes to us with many years of clinical experience, both on the child side and the adult. He has consulted with numerous entities, but most important to some of us is he for many years had a long-term relationship with LMH Health Consulting and providing care, and then became interested in the Treatment and Recovery Center as he heard what was going on, because a lot of his work he did professionally was external to Lawrence, but he was always paying attention here what we were doing. And so he approached us and said, hey, I'd be interested in talking more about this project. Which then eventually led to him being hired as the medical director back in November. And in the last 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, he has also assumed the role as the executive director. For many of you, you may have watched that we had those as separate positions, but in the last couple of months, we made the decision to combine them in the initial year or two, some organic flow. We're not exactly sure the date, but he assumed that role because he was already taking on a lot of the executive director functions. And it just made a lot of sense to have him do both of those things. And he has built a leadership team around him, as well as overseeing the construction of it. So I will, no further ado, introduce Dr. George Thompson. Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Patrick. And as Patrick said, my name is Dr. George Thompson. I'm an adult and child psychiatrist who's been practicing in Kansas for more than 30 years, and I've lived in Lawrence since 2000. And very excited about this project, who many of you, I think, had a role in creating prior to my coming on board. The Treatment and Recovery Center is supported by Douglas County funds. The county has built the building with both sales tax money as well as property tax money over the last several years. And we're actually getting ready to have a ribbon cutting for the facility hopefully next month sometime. We're just finishing up a few details. The Treatment and Recovery Center is a urgent psychiatric center that has 3 parts to it. And you might think of it like an urgent care clinic, like you would go to Med Express or something. But it's an urgent psychiatric walk-in center that'll be open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Friday, and some hours on Saturday and Sunday. And in the urgent walk-in center, we'll see both children and adults, and we'll be able to do crisis management as well as to have a medication evaluation if somebody needs to get started on medications. Generally, people spend less than 2 hours in that portion of the building. Now, some people need a higher level of treatment when they're in a psychiatric crisis because they're suicidal, they're hearing voices, or maybe they're intoxicated on a substance, alcohol, methamphetamines, something like that. And so we have what we call our observation unit, which you might think of as a psychiatric emergency room. We have the capacity, or will when we're fully operational, to have 16 patients who will sit in recliners. And the 2 goals are to help them get calmed back down from whatever crisis they're in, to feel like that they are back in charge of themselves and their lives, and also to make plans for services in the community and to give a warm handoff. And so we're working closely with a number of partners like Bert Nash, Patrick's organization. I see Lori Alvarado on today, so we're working closely with DECA and other places as well, Heartland Radak, of course, Lawrence Memorial Hospital, and other organizations in the community. Patients on the observation unit will stay, in general, less than a day. They may stay 4 hours, they may stay 10 hours, but up to 23, 24 hours. About 2/3 of people who come into a unit like the observation unit, according to benchmarking data, return home to their own community within a day. And so part of the goal of the Treatment and Recovery Center is to help people get back home as soon as possible with their well-being and their hope restored, with sufficient supports to move forward with their lives. 1/3 of the time, people need a higher level of care, and we'll have a higher level of care available in our 3rd unit, which is called the Stabilization Unit. And so on the Stabilization Unit, patients have bedrooms. We can have up to 16 patients. And in general, they'll stay 2 or 3 days there. We'll have the ability to refer people to private psychiatric hospitals as well as to the state psychiatric hospital from there. We'll also, according to the people from KDADS, have the ability to provide medical detox for patients at a certain level, patients that are detoxing from alcohol or from substances like opioids as well. And then our goal will be to get them referred to people like Lori's program at DECA. We are in the process of finishing the building right now. There's a few details left to be completed. We aim to be the first agency licensed by KDADS as a crisis intervention center. That's a new designation that was created by the Crisis Intervention Act of 2017 here in Kansas. And that allows us to function as an independent organization. The Treatment and Recovery Center is operated by a partnership between Bert Nash and LMH called Behavioral Health Partners. We have a board of directors, 1/3 of which are appointed by Bert Nash, 1/3 by LMH, and 1/3 by Douglas County. So 9 people on our board. So our next step is to get licensed. We've started those conversations, and hopefully we'll move forward with that. So depending on when we get licensed, we'll open hopefully later this summer, and we'll let everybody know in more detail what those dates are as soon as we have a clear indication we need to be licensed before we can open. And so the Treatment and Recovery Center, really, I think of it as a gift that citizens of Douglas County have given to themselves. In Proposition 1, the county clearly said, we want to treat mental health issues, we want to treat substance use issues, we want to treat homelessness and other social determinants of health. And so we're aiming to really be good stewards of the county's intentions in creating this center. The last thing I'll mention is that we're modeled on programs that are in Arizona called Connections Health Solutions. So that's where I am today. The sign behind me says Connections, I think. So I'm down here with my team. We've come down for a couple of days to see what's happening here and to learn from their experience. They've been doing this for more than 20 years. And with Dr. Cravens and Bob Tryansky and representatives from Kansas Suicide Prevention Headquarters, as well as Heartland RADAC, we're part of a national early adopter learning community studying crisis intervention systems, along with Miami, Austin, Iowa City, and Missoula, Montana. And so we are very excited to be getting close to opening. You'll all be invited to our ribbon cutting where we say the building is completed. The program won't be open at that point because we want to have you in the building, and we can't have you in the building when patients are in the building. But they won't be opening not too long after that. So that's a brief update on the Treatment and Recovery Center, and I'm happy to answer any questions if that's appropriate.
Well, Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for the update. That was fantastic. It doesn't appear that we have any questions for you today, but I'm sure we will in the future.
Thank you very much. If it's all right, I will leave you now then, and I'll go back to my meeting here with people from Phoenix.
Thank you very much.
All right, have a good day. Bye-bye.
Our final topic today, which is a rather large one, is about fines, fees, and driver's license suspensions, and we're going to kick that off with Jill.
Thanks, Pam. We've got a slide deck that Matt's going to drive for me, and then I'll hand off to Matt here in a minute. But I want to start by just kind of centering us and why the focus on fines, fees, and driver's license from the perspective of the community health plan. The anti-poverty community health plan, if you want to have a full review of that, it's accessible on the link here. But I want to walk through folks and kind of center us in why we're talking about this and how it's derived from the focus of the community health plan that Douglas County is the convener of for two of the planks, one of which we'll talk about specifically today, the anti-poverty community health plan, but Douglas County also is a convener of the behavioral health community health plan in partnership with the behavioral health partners. So next slide. I won't read this word for word, but I do want to make sure folks are aware that the overall goal statement for the anti-poverty community health plan is here, and it's really focused on making sure that we do not see an increase in the overall objective is that we do not see an increase in the number of the percentage of BIPOC children that are living in poverty. We stated that we did not want to see that number increase, that percentage increase, because we tried to be mindful of the impact that COVID-19 is having in those disproportionate rates on our BIPOC communities. Again, I'm not going to read all this to you, but we do try to use an equity lens throughout our work. Next slide. I won't read this all as well, but I will just flag a few things here that I think are consistent with work that CJCC has done in the past. You see our priority populations here that we focus on to reduce disparities and optimize equities. We focus specifically on our BIPOC populations. We talk about justice involved formerly incarcerated residents, single parent female headed households, and their community members that are at 100% of the federal poverty line. And then we have three priority focus areas that we'll dive into. Next slide. There's three of them. One of them is the decriminalization of poverty. That's what we're going to focus on today. Specifically, one of the strategies that is entailed in that focus area. And I do want to make sure that we're talking on first about the objective for the decriminalization of poverty, and that is an objective that has been a core focus of efforts of CJCC and Douglas County for a good amount of time, and that's to reduce the incarceration of Black and American Indian Alaska Native residents. You can see what some of the data that we've looked at historically. There's 3 strategy areas. Dr. Cravens leads strategy area number 1 that's really been focusing on those data dashboards that we know is just getting a ton of usage in the community and helping hold our organizations accountable and sharing data about how we're doing. Strategy 2 is our fine and fee and driver's license revocation group that's co-led by Dr. Cravens and Zaina Afada. And then strategy area number 3 is led by Erica Zimmerman, who's the executive director of Habitat for Humanity. But we're going to talk about strategy area number 2 today. Next slide. So I'm not going to read all this word for word, but I do just want to talk briefly about just to center folks about how this conversation goes beyond my discussion, so you know what we're focusing on, what our game plan is. So our focus is to review and reform fines, fees, and driver's license revocation. So we're looking at things like reviewing discretionary authority of state and local judges, developing strategies and the administrative policies, procedures that could potentially eliminate or revoke a driver's license due to the debt that's owed, and if there's restorative practices that are available, perhaps in assisting folks. So you're going to hear a lot about some ideas around that are relevant to that from Zaina and Jolene that they learned from attending a fine and fee boot camp that was earlier this spring. And then you're also going to hear a little bit more about the efforts that are underway in the unified government around driver's license diversion program, and that I think folks will find meaningful. Next slide. We're looking at how do we implement policies and procedures? How do we think about broader implementation of policies and procedures that can account for folks' abilities to pay? So looking at implementation of policies and procedures that require every individual that comes to court to be offered a poverty or a financial affidavit to be able to assess their ability to pay. I think that there's some points of progress that are happening in our municipal court and our district court that they are using those tools with clients, but are they making sure that we have policies and procedures that make sure every individual is offered that, and maybe some extra assistance in navigating those financial affidavits, because they can be a little tricky. And but the good news is that we have some really great partners that are leading the way. Kansas Legal Services is working with different communities and helping and clients and helping them navigate those affidavits, and also just general resource navigation and how do you navigate the district court and municipal court process. And then we look at alternative compliance models, prioritizing community investment over imprisonment. We have a great community service program, but how do we take a deeper look at that, and is it working to the greatest extent possible? How do we also look at what programs are currently available at a community level that are being made available to folks that are experiencing disproportionate rates, perhaps, of fines and fees that are having an undue burden on them. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure I highlighted to folks is programs like that ECAN has launched earlier this year, and that's the Flip the Coin for Justice program. And they have a nice little flyer that they've shared on their website, and it's been provided to me, but that's a program that pays court fines, fees, mandatory classes, and anything else that are pertinent to avoid jail time. They only received a dinky little $10,000 racial justice grant from the United Way for this year to implement this program, but they're already seeing a high demand for those services from clients that are coming to see them for food assistance and shelter and utility and housing assistance. So we know that there's a need out there and that we have community partners that are trying to come up with solutions. Next slide. And then we're looking at some of the data measures, the key measures that are and data contributors that are leading to folks that are relevant to taking a deeper dive into fines, fees, and driver's license revocations and who it's impacting in particular. So we've A lot of discussions have happened and we feel like the CJCC Racial Disparities Work Group is a great place to continue those discussions. We need to have access to a little bit more data, I think, to be able to have a more informed discussion. But we think that we've got a lot of wind in our sails to do that. I think that there's a lot of good work that's been started also in conversations that we've had with the district court and also with the municipal court around the need for expanding access to alternatives and thinking about things that will help folks get to court and better understand the process. So everything from a self-help center that the district court is exploring to things that like assisting folks with that poverty affidavit that we talked about a few minutes ago. And all of these are the self-help center, the advocacy, client navigation services that can be available in district and municipal court are supported by the FTA work group that was convened last year and issued some recommendations that support this kind of advocacy navigator service to help folks avoid some of these fines and fees and a loss of driver's license. And there's some very big numbers out there in terms of how many folks have lost their driver's licenses in our community. And we think there's a lot of opportunities to think differently about how we can avoid those suspensions and better support folks. That's how I kind of wanted to kick us off. And I think this is a good point for me to hand it off to Matt to talk about the work that the work group has been doing under the confines of the Decriminalization of Poverty work group, specific to fines and fees. And I'll hand it off to Matt.
All right, I got unmuted there. Hi, everyone. So this presentation is intended to give us a little information about the common types of fees in municipal and district court and some data on how much fines and fees are owed for people in the Douglas County Jail, some information about waiving fines and fees, and then the numbers of driver's license suspended for non-payment. Please feel free to jump in if you have any questions. So this table is roughly adapted from a table by Alexis Harris at the University of Washington. It describes the main types of legal financial obligations that are ordered by a court upon conviction as part of a sentence. So these obligations are sometimes described as financial penalties or penal debt. A person is generally legally obligated to pay these, and until they do, they're under the purview of the court. So the first one is fines, and these are the financial obligations related to a specific offense. So if you're pulled over for speeding 15 miles per hour over the limit, the fine in Lawrence Municipal Court is $110. It's $220 if you're in a school or construction zone. Fees are in the next line. These are for court processing and collections. So there are a lot of different types of fees, like $122 fee for your driver's license to be reinstated. The fee or court processing cost associated with all municipal court infractions like speeding is $63. So the total amount due for speeding 15 miles per hour over the limit ordered by municipal court is $173. That's $110 plus the 63 in costs. So the court costs for district court traffic violations are $108. Whereas fines are often used for punishment or deterrence of specific offenses, at least in theory, fees are intended to make defendants pay for the operations of the court system. They tend to shift costs from the taxpayers to the defendants, and they're used to generate revenue in a lot of cases. Fines and fees have always been used by court systems throughout time, but they've been increasingly utilized in the last 15 to 20 years. Restitution there in the third line is a direct payment to a victim to pay for costs like medical bills. Restitution repays victims of a crime for their loss. And a surcharge is a fee or financial obligation that's calculated as a percent of the principal legal financial obligation. For example, 25% of the amount due for municipal court debt sent to private collections, or 25% of the amount collected for district court debt to be sent to collected by the court trustee's office. Today, we'll start by discussing fees and court costs, the legal financial obligations in the second row, but we'll also discuss the total amount due from all of these sources. So note that this table doesn't mention other costs a person might encounter in legal matters, like the cost for a drug and alcohol assessment or a domestic violence assessment, and that may be necessary for diversion or to resolve a case. We'll discuss those briefly a little bit later. So here are some of the common fees assessed in municipal court, and we'll have a slide for district court too. As mentioned, $63 is added on to all fines as court costs. $23.50 is mandated by state law, and Lawrence has a charter ordinance allowing for additional costs of $39.50. The fee, if a bench warrant is issued, is $50. But Judge Miller told me yesterday that this was just deleted from the fine schedule, so I believe this fee is no longer active. The 122 driver's license reinstatement fee is charged if someone's license has been suspended and they submit an application to get reinstated. The fee when unpaid court debt, i.e. the amount of fines and fees owed, is submitted to a private collections agency is 25% of the amount due. So if a person owes $200, the fee is $50. 25% is a pretty large surcharge, and it does significantly inflate the amount that a person owes. Note that this fee is kept by the collection agency. The expungement fee is the amount that the court asks to clear someone's case record in the system. You can file for expungement 5 years after the sentence is satisfied, depending on the case. And while not a fee, when a person is booked into the jail for failing to appear in municipal court, a cash bond is sometimes set at the amount of fines and fees that the person would owe if they were convicted. The median cash bond for an FTA in municipal court is approximately $350. So this is most often done with traffic violations. And in these situations, the person stays in jail until he or she can pay the amount of their fines and fees that are due, or until the judge releases them, which the judge will sometimes do after they've been in jail for a little while. Here are some of the common district court fees. The first is the court costs or docket fees. So court costs aren't exactly the same as docket fees, but they're sort of functionally similar, and I'll use the terms interchangeably. So docket fees are the amount that the court charges for processing. I've picked out a few common ones, but there are docket fees for most interactions with the court. In fact, the document listing all the district court docket fees is about 3 pages long and very small text. So these few here only take up a very small amount of those 3 pages. The docket fee added to each fine for traffic violations is $108. In criminal cases charged upon conviction, the docket fees are charged when you get convicted. In felony cases, the defendant is charged $193 at conviction. For misdemeanor cases, the amount is $8. In civil cases, docket fees are paid up front when the case is filed. For limited actions, the most common civil case type, the fee ranges from $54 to $120. For small claims, it's $47.50 to $67.50. For domestic civil cases, it's $195. Docket fees probably do hit the most people of all the fees on this page, and they're generally set by state statute. The fee for reinstatement of a driver's license is $122. This is in accordance with state statute. The fee when unpaid court debt, like fines, fees, and restitution, is collected by the court trustee's office is 25% of the amount collected. The monthly fee when child support is collected by the court trustee's office is 5% of the monthly obligation. This fee is for non-Title 4D cases or cases for individuals who are not receiving certain public assistance. The Department of Children and Families provides Title 4D collection services. In cases handled by our court trustee's office, each party pays half. So if the monthly obligation is $500, the total fee is $25, and each party pays $12.50 per month. The filing fee to appeal a municipal court conviction to district court conviction is $94.50. You have 10 days after your municipal court conviction to file a notice to appeal, and the fee is due at the time the notice is submitted. The fee to appeal a district court conviction to the appellate court is $155. And fortunately, we actually do have the court trustee, Mary Beth Diaz, with us today. If you have any questions, in fact, Mary Beth, is there anything I'm leaving out or anything you would like to add on this? If not, that's okay too.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Beth Diaz, Court Trustee's Office. No, I don't really have anything to add at this point. I would just say one quick thing about the collection fee on court debt. The statutory cap on that is 33%. And our office, per contract with OJA, charges 25%. So there are other collection agencies throughout the state that charge as high as 33%.
Thank you very much. And, you know, by talking about fines and fees, we're not trying to say that Lawrence or Douglas County are worse than any other communities. I certainly believe that we're more progressive in a lot of ways, and we're not Ferguson, Missouri by any chance in our level of fines and fees at all. It's just important that we sort of look at the data, evaluate some of our practices, where there's ways to maybe align ourselves with best practices, and just inform the CJCC so you all have the knowledge. So the last two slides have showed some common fees, and this is now going to present the results of an analysis of the total amount due in municipal court, including all fines, fees, and restitution for people in jail. These are the amounts after any amounts are waived by the judges or through property affidavits. The sample includes all 28 people being held in jail on 4/18/22 on at least one municipal court case. Most of these people are in jail primarily for district court cases. 6 were being held purely for municipal court cases. So I just want to emphasize, this is not a random sample of the municipal court defendants. It includes people being held in jail on at least one municipal court case. These people will tend to have more cases than your typical municipal court defendant. And we are using a single day's population. The population could be slightly different on any given day due to random fluctuations in the data. So what I did is I looked up each person's total balance due for fines, fees, and any other costs as of 4/28/22, the day I was looking it up. And using the municipal court full court database, the balance due can include amounts the person owes for older cases too. So, if you had a case last year for 200 and this year for 200, the total amount due would be 400. I don't know if people want to guess in their heads the average amount. We'll show that in the next bit here. But the total amount ranges from 0 to 9,384. Only one person owes $0. The average amount owed is $2,556. The median amount is about $1,700. The median cuts the sample in half. So 50% of people have less than $1,700 and 50% have amounts more than $1,700. It's not affected by very high values for 1 or 2 people as the averages. And so just to note, these 28 people have about 138 cases with amounts due in municipal court. And this only includes the amount for municipal court cases. It doesn't include the amount for district, which we'll discuss in 2 slides. I also got a note from municipal court. They wanted me to report the amount owed for current cases that they were being held on. So excluding any amounts they owed in older cases, like from previous years. The mean amount due for current cases for these 28 people is 1,180. The median amount due is 706 for current cases. And then they also noted that when you count the total amount due for past and present cases, about 53% of the amount owed has been submitted to collections. I'm told that collections agencies are unable to report court debt to the 3 credit bureaus. So in theory, it doesn't affect your credit rating. This may be true, however, we don't know if the credit bureau search court records for judgments. That's unclear. But I am told that court debt submitted to collections as of 2016 isn't reported to the credit agencies. So this is the per charge amount due in municipal court. I was also asked to sort of present this information. This will obviously be a lot lower than the total amount due for all charges in all cases, because a person can have multiple charges in multiple cases. But this is the universe of data in 2021. It shows that there were 4,715 charges that were adjudicated in municipal court that year, with the finding of either guilty or diverted, and which fines or fees were assessed. The average fine fee assessed per charge is 220. The median is 143, and most moving violations are about 143. So this makes sense. Here is information provided by Vicki Stanwicks from Municipal Court about their cases sent to collections. So in 2021, 429 cases were sent to collections, totaling 192,000 in fines and fees. The mean amount is 447 sent to collections. The median amount is 338. I'll let you read these next points, but these are a few contributors to some of the higher amounts. There are people with DUI convictions, third and subsequent driving while suspended convictions. The amount from these particular offenses add up to about 18% of the total amount submitted to collections. And then also twice a year, municipal court does a purge review of cases that have been on warrant status for more than 5 years. So the warrants are typically for appear for a motion to revoke probation. The warrants are recalled and the adjudicated fines are submitted to collections. And about 40% of the cases submitted to collections last year were as a result of this warrant purge process. And so I'm presenting, both courts. This is the district court amount. So this is the total amount due in district court for people in jail. The sample includes all 154 people held on jail on 5/2/22 on at least one district court case. The total amount includes all fines, fees, restitution, and costs in current and past cases. And I'll give people a minute to sort of think what they think the average or median might be. So the total amount ranges from 0 to 122,000. The average amount due is 2,774. The median amount due is 265. I report the median because a couple people had very large restitution amounts, which inflate the average. And then one thing to point out is that there are people with both municipal court and district court cases. So I'll show that on the next slide here. This is the combined amount in municipal and district court for the 21 people with at least one municipal and one district court case. These people are the overlaps between the 28 people in municipal court and the 100 district court slide. The average combined amount is 3,132 and the median is about 3,100. So that was a lot of numbers. If anyone has any questions, do feel free to jump in. So I just wanted to sort of put one slide in here thinking about how much low-income defendants can afford to pay. I mean, sometimes when we see these fines and fees amounts, it's a little difficult to put in perspective. As a county employee, I have a certain perspective too, so I looked up some of the sort of more robust studies on the topic. So one common study is the Federal Reserve 2018 study that's cited a lot. They do this survey regularly. It's a reputable survey. They find that about 40% of Americans would struggle to cover an unexpected cost of or expense of $400. These individuals would need to borrow, sell something, put it on a credit card and pay it off over time or not be able to pay it. And then another recent study by Mello in 2021 that was based on a study of all traffic citations in Florida from 2011 to 2015 linked to credit report data, found that one traffic fine averaging $190 for a low-income driver is associated with an increase of $75 in debt, unpaid debt in collections over the next 3 to 6 quarters. So the debt in collections is actually from sources other than the traffic fines. It looks like a lot of individuals will pay that and then put unpaid bills left to collections. One thing just to note is, again, because we all have our certain perspective, heavy debt does tend to exact large psychological toll. By contrast, high income defendants can pay their fines and fees without much hardship. So there is some inequity in this that, Jill pointed out, which is why we have some work groups that are looking into it, and we want to make sure we're aligned with best practices. So waiving fines and fees can happen. As I mentioned, the total amounts shown on the prior slides are the amounts after any fines and fees are waived. According to the Kansas Supreme Court decision in State versus Robinson, district courts must take into account a defendant's ability to pay in criminal and civil cases and the nature of the burden that the payment of fines and fees will impose. A defendant can file a financial affidavit or a poverty affidavit, and his fines or fees can be waived, but Robinson does not require that the defendant submit a financial affidavit for fines and fees to be waived. The judge can do that. Robinson also doesn't apply to municipal court, just to district courts. So this brings up the question, how often are fines and fees waived? With traffic violations, they are rarely waived. With criminal and civil cases, I can't say for sure how often they're waived. I'm told that they aren't waived too often in municipal court, and I'm told that there's no data on how often it happens in district court. But the one data point I can give you is that in 2021, there were 76 expungement applications that were submitted to municipal court, and financial affidavits were submitted in 13 of them. That's 17% of the time. It's a relatively small percentage of applications, but I'm told that financial affidavits are used more often with the expungement applications than in other situations. So the 17% may be sort of an upper bound to the estimate. Financial affidavits are often also submitted by defendants wishing to obtain court-appointed counsel in municipal court. Motions for a reduction in fines and fees are considered by the municipal court judge on a case-by-case basis. Any questions? So while there are a lot of costs that defendants can face in municipal court and district court, Douglas County does not charge defendants for a number of programs and services that other counties do charge for, and I really want to point these out. So some examples include electronic monitoring and house arrest. These are ordered at no cost to defendants. Pretrial release program monitoring. State statute allows agencies to charge a fee, and some counties charge a weekly or monthly supervision fee, but Douglas County does not. Services received in drug court and behavioral health court, such as mental health and substance use treatment, come at no cost. Youth supervision like probation and youth programs like the Parent Project and Strengthening Families are free. For adult probation clients, Strengthening Families and Smart Recovery classes are free. Criminal Justice Services also give clients free bus passes. And there are probably more than this too, but this is just sort of a selection of ones that come at no cost. And then sort of the last topic that I want to address is driver's license suspension. So there are several situations in which your driver's license can be suspended in Douglas County. There's several times when we interpret the law such that we don't do it, but there are sometimes when we do it. One of the major reasons for suspended licenses is unpaid fees. Specifically, it can be suspended for failure to pay fines for traffic and other violations after the deadline and a 30-day notice to appear. This can occur in both district and municipal court. In municipal court, the judge does not suspend a license if the case is settled and they have unpaid fines. He usually suspends it if the person doesn't pay the scheduled fine for minor traffic violations and doesn't appear, or if they have unpaid debt and the case hasn't yet been resolved. Your license can also be suspended if you fail to appear in municipal court. Certain violations also require suspensions, specific violations like minor in possession and second offense transporting an open container. And then the Kansas statute on suspension of driver's license is listed here, has a whole lot more information than what we've presented so far. So this is just some data, and I want to thank Jill Jolliker for putting in this data request with the Department of Revenue. The table describes the number of suspended licenses in Douglas County specifically. The data were provided by the Kansas Department of Revenue Division of Vehicles in response to Jill's request. The data are current as of January 2022. There are currently 5,109 total drivers with suspended licenses. These suspensions could have started in past years, and they didn't necessarily start in the last year. So certainly some of them are old. What we do know is that 54% of the suspended drivers, or 2,738, were suspended due to unpaid traffic citations. 37%, or 1,903, were suspended due to no insurance. Reasons like DUIs are not too common. By comparison, Douglas County has 96,316 adults. This excludes the children. So 5,109 represents a non-trivial share of the adults in the county. It's also important to state that having a driver's license suspended does typically make it more difficult for someone to pay back their fines, according to studies, because obviously in Kansas especially, a person needs a car to drive to their job and to earn money to pay off the court debt. So it should also be stated that there is the $122 fee too that people face. It's important to note that defendants can complete community service instead of paying off their court debt. So the rate of compensation to work off court debt is $10 an hour for municipal court and $7 an hour for district court. The rates, should obviously be higher for district court. That's not even quite minimum wage. But for many people, it's probably not worth working at a $7 an hour rate, but that might explain why district court doesn't have a lot of community service hours completed. What we can see here from this figure is that in 2021, there were only 344 total hours of community service completed for district court. By contrast, it's used a lot more in municipal court. About 2,100 community service hours are completed in 2021. And here are the costs for common assessments and classes. So these are not fees in the strict sense of the word, but when I was talking about fines and fees with people, they were like, oh, you have to mention assessments, because basically a lot of cases get continued because people can't pay these assessments. I'll mention there's trade-offs, right? Because assessments allow us to sort of rightfully put people with the correct services, but some people can't pay them. So there is a trade-off, but they're required to be paid by defendants out of pocket in a lot of situations. So they sort of act as de facto fees. The drug and alcohol assessment costs $150. It's required for most drug and alcohol related cases in district and municipal court, including to apply to diversion for some drug or alcohol misdemeanors in district court. It's required in first and second DUI cases and for diversion in DUI cases. An assessment can also be required as a condition of diversion in DUI cases. And a drug and alcohol assessment is also sometimes requested to facilitate plea negotiations or as a condition of plea agreement. In municipal court, it's also ordered when there's evidence at sentencing that drugs or alcohol were a significant contributor to the offense. So this assessment is widely used. The domestic violence assessment, which is required in almost all domestic violence cases in district and municipal court, costs $175. I'm told that, as I said, a large number of cases are continued because defendants aren't able to pay those. I also show here that the cost of the batterers intervention program classes are $25 per class. So again, it should be noted that there is a balance. Some people have talked about needing to find more sources of funding for these assessments so defendants aren't having to pay them out of cost. But that's the question for, I think, work groups in the future. Probation costs are down here. These are costs for probation administered by the county. There are also one-time probation fees allowed by state statute that are collected by the judiciary that aren't collected by the county. That's $120 for a felony and $60 for a misdemeanor. The monthly supervision fee is $25 per month for county supervision, and the drug screens can cost money depending on if it's a negative or positive screen. So that was a lot of information. In general, I wanted these slides to describe the sort of types of fees and fines that defendants in municipal court and district court face. Fines, fees, and costs occur at a lot of interactions with the criminal justice system that a lot of people weren't aware of. I wasn't aware of a lot of these when I started the research. It's been enlightening to see the number that people do face. From the analysis of the total amount due, you can also see how much these can add up to if you include restitution and costs and fines and fees. For a lot of people, it can be several $1,000s. And then here are just some of the remaining questions for work groups or for the CJCC to address in the future. So how many people are ordered to pay fines or fees each year in municipal court and district court? We have some information on this for a municipal court, but not complete information and not for district court. What is the average amount of fines and fees owed per person? So people not in jail. I showed the amounts for people in jail, but for people not in jail, we don't have a lot of information on this. We can try to do a little bit more digging. What is the average amount of fees and fines owed per person? Sorry, I mentioned that one already, but also, do they disproportionately impact people of color? There's a lot of evidence from jurisdictions other than Douglas that they do, but we haven't looked at Douglas County specifically. Can the financial affidavit be utilized more regularly? And which fines and fees can be reduced? Who can reduce them? State legislators or CJCC members or other folks? For instance, what would it take to reduce some of the surcharge amounts? Can that be easily done? Is that best practices? What does research say? And then I just thought I would throw it out there to people. Are there other questions that we should investigate as work groups or the CJCC, or are there any other questions that you all have? So thank you very much for your time.
I have a quick question. Matt, did you look at the inmate worker program for those that are in jail? There is a program where they can work at the jail, and part of that can go to their costs and fees.
No, I haven't. I'd love to hear more about it though.
I think Carrie could probably give you more information about it, but there is that program.
Matt, could you go ahead and stop sharing your screen, please? Thanks.
Actually, the Iwp program is administered by our office, and the inmates that are in the jail that are approved to work in the kitchen, and the jail has a process. I'm not sure what process they go to determine who's eligible to participate, but they do that on their end, and then they'll let my office know if a defendant is there working, and they'll send an inquiry to see if there are any district court obligations that can be worked off. And so we'll communicate back and forth, and the district court piece of it the obligations get waived. If it's a case that's been referred to collections, the collection fee gets waived. They don't have to work the collection fee piece off. It just gets waived. And then there's a counterpart in municipal court, I'm not sure who it is, that does the same for municipal court cases. I have some numbers, I don't have them here in front of me, but for 2020, I think it was around $35,000 worth of district court debt was worked off. For 2021, it was a little bit less, but it's a good program.
I agree. We use it quite regularly.
Thanks for that information, Commissioner Portillo. You had a question?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I really appreciate this overview, and Jill, thank you for the kind of framing of this discussion and how it fits into the community health plan overall. In our discussions on the racial disparities work group, we've talked quite a bit about kind of what are some of the goals of fines and fees and what are some of our goals of having this conversation. And I think it's really important to go back to what Matt said early on in his presentation of kind of disaggregating what some of the goals are for fines as potential punitive measures, things like traffic tickets, and then the fees, which are often used to kind of raise revenue for local governments. And this is something that we've talked quite a bit about as a commission. I could never speak for the whole commission, but just kind of having conversations as a commission about what are our goals for how we want to approach criminal justice reform. And I think some of the data that Matt presented at the very end about how much of a burden this places on our community members, we do want to move away from the use of fees as revenue generation, because that's something that disproportionately harms the most vulnerable in our community. And seeing how complex it is to kind of look at where all of these fees are means that things like the conversations in CJCC, because we can bring together municipal court, district court, and all of these perspectives, there are lots of small fees that start adding up for folks and become really big barriers in our community. So I'd love to hear from some of our community members in particular about kind of how this may be affecting the community at large, and then really thinking through next action steps. What are the goals? I read in the paper that this evening, the City Commission is going to be talking about some of this with municipal court. So I don't know if Craig or Commissioner Littlejohn, if you want to jump in any conversations of how the city is coming into this conversation as well. But I really appreciate all of the information that was shared. There was one piece that I found a little surprising, and that was, I'm sure, just because it was at the end. So it's piqued my interest. I saw that there was a fee for drug and alcohol screenings, and it's different if it's negative or positive, which does make me think that there's a punitive element of if it's positive. So I'd love to hear from Pam about why there's that difference there, because that seems more like punishment than necessarily a fee for administering that, which I would imagine would be the same regardless of what happens with the outcome of that test. But any additional information would be great.
Great, thank you. Dia Valdez, do you have a comment, question?
So yeah, thank you. I just want to make a few points after hearing what Matt has presented. First of all, our office has been working with Fair and Just Prosecution and Fines and Fees Justice Center, which are national nonprofits, excuse me, and looking into these issues and sort of doing a deep dive based on all of the points that Matt brought up. All of that seems very familiar to me, and it's something that, of course, our office is very interested in and will continue to work with those national groups and see what the trend is in terms of some reform on that, on those points. I do want to point out that as a general practice in our office, we do not oppose waivers of fines or fees. When those are requested by defense counsel, we agree. I can't think of a single situation where we've asked the court to impose fines or fees. That's just our policy here in our office. The third point I want to make is that this is related to, like, what does those fine or fee, like for a traffic citation, just to make it very simple, what makes up that pot of money? And I do want to say, just as a matter of our sort of victim-centric approach to prosecution, there's a 2.24% of that ticket, that fine, that goes to fund the Crime Victims Compensation Board, which is our state board that compensates victims for violent crime. And that money that comes in from offenders, so if I get a speeding ticket, 2.24% of my ticket will go towards that fund, and it is used to assist victims of violent crime. But it's even better than that, because under federal funding, there's a federal funding that comes from Washington, that the more money we have in our fund, the more money there is to match. There's a matching, if you will, from the federal government that increases the Crime Victims Compensation Board, so we can provide, the board can provide services and reparations to victims of violent crime. So during the years that I was chair of that board, there was a year that we handed out or awarded, if you will, or granted almost $5 million in crime victims compensation, which is a very, very important, I think, point that I want to make. So I would be, that particular sort of small percentage is really important to making sure victims and survivors of crime are compensated. So then the next point I want to make is that this office is one of very few offices in the state that doesn't charge a prosecutorial diversion fee, processing fee. We have a robust diversion program, and anyone who qualifies for diversion under law, we will entertain that request through an application process. Most counties will charge an application fee. And just to give you a sense of what we're dealing with here, Johnson County here, our neighbor, charges a $30 traffic diversion application fee. Whether you get the diversion or not, it's the application fee. For a felony diversion application, the fee is $150. Again, just an application fee. There's also program fees and other fees associated with prosecution work that the DA's office in Johnson County charges, and there is no sliding scale. So if someone has got an issue, obviously cannot pay, that's not considered. Here in Douglas County, we don't charge for any of that, and that's because we've had the support of our county commission that we don't need to do that. So I'm really proud of that. We want to continue that. But I want to let you know that Douglas County is one of very few counties in the states that does do that. And then the last point that I will make is, let's see, maybe that's it. I just had a long list, but I want to let you know this is an area that's very, something that we're watching very closely. We are looking at it at a national level. We do want to hear what you all have to say about it. And that I think we're doing a lot of really good work in this office, and any ideas that you all have that we can entertain, certainly we're willing to do it. I know the last point I wanted to make is Matt brought up just support of programs, county support of programs that include behavioral health court, drug court, diversion, any of those alternative programs. That's something this office truly supports with our own resources, our own personnel. And that is really also an anomaly in Kansas. So we're continuing to grow those programs. We've hired Jim Carpenter, who's a wonderful community advocate. He tells people his job is to keep people out of jail, connect them with community resources. And if we can keep people out of jail, keep them out of the system, then there won't be fines, fees, and other things that'll be associated with that individual. So that's my 10 cents there. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Suzanne. Marielle?
Thank you. Maria Ferredo, community member. I just want to send my appreciation for all of this information that's collected. I think that, and in appreciation to Commissioner Portillo for asking for the perspective of community members, because most of the time what a community member sees is the price tag and not necessarily where these fees go to, what they mean. It's just kind of more of that financial burden and how it disproportionately impacts poor folks, and how you are less likely to get out of this cycle of poverty if you have continued fees like this. And I think as far as housing, we see this a lot with our clients in trying to access housing and them having this burden of court fees or of traffic tickets and the repercussions that can happen if you lose those things, such as a revoked license or something like that, that can further get you down the path of not being able to sustain and support yourself. And so I think a deep analysis of why we collect these fees, though they may fund programming that is important, it is still a punitive system. It is still something that is disproportionately affecting somebody, especially poor folks, people of color, primarily, that these programs that we are funding are meant to serve, right? So we're creating, in essence, a cycle of harm. And so I'd really encourage to see more in-depth look of who this is impacting, how it's impacting outside of the jail population, and maybe looking at other funding sources that we can find to fund these important programs and not necessarily relying on punitive functions in order to fund these. And I especially, again, will reiterate it for a community member, sometimes paying these fees is instead of paying rent, is instead of buying groceries, taking care of their family. So it's very important to look at these. And so I'm appreciative for the data and hope we can look a little bit more into how we can start changing how we, how these court fees, how these different fees are applied, and if they are necessary, and if we can do more, because I know and I see Douglas County not charging fees, and that's encouraging, but I know we can always do more. So I think that's also my input as a community member. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariel. This is Pam again, and I wanted to respond to Commissioner Portillo's concerns about the fee that we charge in community corrections. And I completely agree. On the juvenile side, we've never charged for negative UAs because that's the desire, is not to have people using drugs and alcohol. And we'll be making that change on the adult side as well. Thank you for your concern. I think our next presentation is with Jolene and Zaina.
I better unmute myself. Okay, so Zaina did a fantastic job on this PowerPoint. So this is great. Yeah, just a background, Zaina and I represented Douglas County at the boot camp March 3rd through 4th this year. And I was glad to hear DA Valdez quote from the Fines and Fees Justice Center, because they were the main group that sponsored this. There were actually two other groups, Policy Link, a National Research and Action Institute advancing racial and economic equity. They're headquartered in Oakland, California, with offices in New York, Los Angeles, and Washington, and the Financial Justice Project of San Francisco, located in Treasurer Jose Cisneros' office. And boy, I tell you something, San Francisco has done some wonderful, very innovative things on this topic that everybody has brought up today. There were 106 attendees and 27 presenters. Many of the presenters had lived experiences. The Financial Justice Project starts with this sentence or a statement, and I think it's applicable here. The general public and policy leaders are often unaware of the human toll of excessive fines and fees that exceed people's ability to pay, nor do leaders realize that solutions often exist that work better, both for the government and for the people. So let's start the PowerPoint. Here's next screen. Here's what we tell each other that are the stated reasons for fines and fees. And I'll let you guys read these. I don't need to read them to you. However, next slide points out the reality. Okay, fines and fees criminalize poverty. The figure most quoted at the boot camp were nationally 75 to 80% of people who owe fees are indigent. And if you look at the BIDS facts, in Kansas, 85% of adults charged with felonies are indigent. And if you look at the 7th Judicial District statistics, that's Douglas County, between 2017 and 2020, 77% of people charged with misdemeanors are indigent. So we're kind of in the national ballpark. If somebody can't pay, obviously you're not gonna accomplish your goals. The US Commission on Civil Rights reports numerous studies have shown that racial bias occurs. So the real reason of fines and fees is often to collect money for municipal expenses. And this bottom one in Brookside, Alabama, let's hope it's an outlier. 49% of the municipal budget was paid for by fines and fees. You can read about that in the Birmingham Times, January 29th, 2022. So, next slide. Here's what Alabama Appleseed found when they interviewed over 1,000 people who are trying to pay off court debt. As was pointed out earlier, 83% gave up basic necessities. And 38% said they committed a crime to get money to pay their fines. That obviously doesn't protect public safety. Almost half went to jail. 45% had their driver's license suspended. So let's take another look at driver's license suspensions on the next slide. Okay, driver's license suspensions all over the country. When this was studied, they do not increase payments over only poverty. So we have referenced this compliance assistance program in Phoenix. And I want to add some details on that. In Phoenix, 7,000 driver's licenses were reinstated, just reinstated. And that year, Phoenix gained $87 million in labor income as people found jobs, and $149.6 million in gross domestic product. So obviously, driver's license suspensions, at least in Phoenix and probably everywhere, completely counterproductive. As a result, 22 states have currently curbed or ended license suspensions for non-payment. Okay, next slide. Let's take a look at the high cost of collections. Now, the first statistic is from 2014. The number typically quoted at the boot camp was 76 billion, but few billion here, few billion there. There's a lot of debt nationwide resulting from unpaid fines and fees. Now, due to the resources required, the cost of collecting outstanding debt is usually higher than the money it generates. And I'd like to report to you a private conversation I had with Matt Menendez from the Brennan Institute, because he had it and he presented at the boot camp, and then we talked again later. He presented on their research to see how much collections cost. And he told me it's often hard to ascertain because collection and enforcement involves multiple agencies and levels of government. However, in Bernalillo County in New Mexico, they did an in-depth research and pinched all the pennies and looked at all the costs and found that they spend $1.17 to collect $1. So obviously this doesn't work very well. And county employees often have to do debt monitoring, collection, and it's kind of a waste of time. So let's have the next slide. Now, since the status quo makes little or no public safety, criminal justice, or economic sense, many places all over the country have looked for alternatives to levying fines that impose impossible financial burdens on poor people and their families. So this is just a few of the ideas that people are trying out, and many of them are working very, very well. First of all, if someone comes in who's homeless, a minor, just out of jail, or a recipient of SSI or food stamps, just assume they have no ability to pay. If it's not obvious, you can use the HUD standards to assess ability to pay. A lot of places are setting up realistic payment plans that are no more than 2% of the monthly income. And because so many of indigent people have problems that, quite frankly, are bigger than the court fines and fees, in order to kind of get organized, if the person pays 12 times in 15 months, no matter what they owe, the fine is forgiven because this person is taking responsibility and moving on the right track. And no payment required until you're out of jail for 6 months. Now, the Kansas contingent got together and we realized that a lot of the fines and fees are set by the state legislature. So in Wyandotte County, one of the judges uses the 8th Amendment to the Constitution, which prohibits imposing excessive fines. And she told me, and I quote, "So far, I've gotten away with it." So I assume maybe we can too. And it sounds like DA Valdez, you're doing a great job. Okay, over and over and over, panel after panel, they told us, if you charge people fines they can afford, they will pay. But not if you turn them into Sisyphus. So, rethinking fines and fees, making them for in line with what people can afford. You don't need to worry about the rest of it. But still, a lot of places are looking for alternatives to fines and fees. So let's have the next slide. Vouchers instead of tickets. So if a police officer stops a kid in a clunker car with a broken taillight, he or she can give the person a voucher to take it to the body shop and get it fixed. If the person doesn't take it to the body shop within a certain amount of time, then you can follow up and have other alternatives. But this increases public safety instead of poverty. In addition, and this has also been mentioned many times here in Douglas County, you can offer social services like drug rehab and mental health instead of jail. And a lot of people would like to do that instead. And my goodness, all over the country, community service is taking very creative approaches. Instead of just volunteering, it can include counseling, mentorship, GED, job training, and many other services that are designed to get the person functional, back on track, and productive instead of owing money and going to jail. One of the most important parts of this boot camp that I would like to see more of in Douglas County is seeking out and listening to people with lived experiences to find out alternatives that fit their situation. I want to close with a story from the boot camp. One of the participants on the panel with a lived experience was a young woman. She was not caught up in the court system, but her brother is incarcerated. He owes huge fines and fees, and he has to pay money just to call his family and stay in touch. She brought tears to my eyes when she said, "Everything I have goes to my brother." Still brings tears to my eyes. He is my highest priority. Relatives often end up paying the fines. 87% of these relatives are women. Most are BIPOC women. We are punishing not only the poverty of the so-called criminal, but also assigning whole families to generational poverty as they try to take care of their loved ones. I've really enjoyed hearing a lot of the thoughts of people here today, because I do think we're on the right track. We must continue to recognize the problems we have here and fix them. This is Lawrence, Kansas. We can do anything. Are there any questions?
Dana, can you, thanks.
I just want to make a quick comment to the people who are attendees. We will have questions open to the public around the end of the meeting.
Seeing no questions, Jolene and Zaina, thank you for the presentation today. Jill, did you want to introduce our next presenter?
Well, and maybe before Jill does, I do think we need to go back a little bit eventually to Commissioner Portillo's question about next steps and kind of what the CJCC would like to see for next steps. So I'd appreciate a little feedback from the group. Thanks. Go ahead. Sorry, Jill.
That's okay. I want to introduce Judge Brandy Nichols Reykovic. And apologies, Brandy, if I said your name wrong. Lots of gratitude to you for being with us today, and I hope we give some time for you to talk about some of the programs that you've been shepherding in the unified government. Jolene mentioned that the UG participated in the Fine and Fee Boot Camp, but what you're doing in Wyandotte County really got on my radar screen as an outcropping of the community health plan in the unified government and how this all plays into the community health plan there. So Judge, go ahead.
Hi, well, I'm Brandy Nichols Reykovic. I started my career in Kansas Legal Aid Clinic. Hi, Professor Valdez. And then I went to Kansas Legal Services. So really what I have done is taken some ARPA, the COVID opportunity, leveraged kind of what we learned in legal clinic and mixed it with legal services and put together a program. I see that I have 2 minutes, so I will try to give you a short rundown. So what we are going to do is at that first point where you come for a traffic arraignment, there's going to be both an attorney or a paralegal sitting actually in the courtroom. We are going to refer them, we're going to tell them about a driving while suspended program, advise them that if they choose this program, it'll be a diversion and that they will have an attorney or a paralegal to work through. Kansas Legal Services will be there to hand them their contact information. They will have one more continuance to come into court. During this 4-week gap, the prosecutor is going to see if they are appropriate for the program. So the people we would see as not appropriate are the driving under the influence repeat offenders. The interlock people will qualify because the goal is to put them on the interlock, correct? But the constant DUIs not apply. There are reckless and eluding guys, you know, that get the tickets because that's as much as they can get with maybe any other violent crimes that are happening. If you're suspended on reckless and eluding and multiple those, you're not going to qualify. Everybody else is going to. We're not going to care much about the situation. You are then going to be given an attorney and a paralegal, and that is going to be your contact point. They are going to run you through what the judges ourselves, what we used to do is just literally print off the KDOR report and give them a map, and they would come in every 60 to 90 days. We'd work with them. We got a lot of anecdotal information. We don't have a lot of concrete data, but that really worked. Sometimes that takes 2 or 3 years because people don't really believe as a judge that you really you're caring to help them. So we're looking forward to Kansas Legal Services taking that route from us. You don't have to believe me as a judge that I'm going to help you. We're going to give you this opportunity. In municipal courts, the jurisdiction is 1 year. You can extend it for up to 2 years. So we will, in time, we will extend it up to 2 years. If you fail our program, you're going to get a driving while suspended on your record. You decide to come in the next time. If you still qualify, you're going to get another bite at the apple. We're not really concerned if you didn't take advantage of it the first time. So that is kind of it in the nutshell. In addition to that, we are going to collect, we've asked legal services to collect our data based on census tract, because we do want to connect with community health, because, you know, a lot of the mental health issues, a lot of the poverty issues will arise in municipal court. They don't get picked up in juvenile, and they're functioning within the society. They have a job, they're not trespassing, things like that. We'll see them. So we know the best bet is to cut crime off at the root. So what we're trying to do to get this information is to do the census tract. And that way we can see exactly where it's going to hit. And we all know that's what's going to be. It's going to be the BIPOC community. So that is sort of it in a nutshell. We have lots of other questions. I'm doing a lot of this other stuff. We too are working with CCFFJ. One thing I would say just real quick that Jolene and Zaina kind of touched on, in CCFFJ, they say really impress the importance of a subject matter expert. The subject matter expert is the previously impacted person. So make sure as you're building this to consider when you're bringing your community members on, that is fantastic, but make sure the big voices are coming from the previously impacted person and bring them along all of the way. I will stop talking because I think that leaves 4 minutes if you want to ask me questions. If not, you can email me. That's fine.
Thank you, Judge. And I think what we know will happen moving forward, that we can continue to tap into the talents of what's happening in the unified government. And also the conversation, what Zaina and Jolene presented, and Saline County also participated in the Fine and Fee Boot Camp, having kind of a little Kansas cohort that can team up and imagine and experiment locally, but also advocate at the state as well, and be kind of a self-supporting network. Yeah.
That is correct. And also in Kansas City, there is, I think maybe Judge Miller was kind of in around that conversation. There's a lot of Olathe is on board, OP is on board, Shawnee's on board, Lenex is on board. So this could really get as big as possible. I did work with Gail Finney a little bit before COVID and about stopping the reinstatement fees. That's another aspect to it. But we got COVID. And then if you want to know anything about cyber attacks, let me know. I'm now an expert, which is why I have a messy desk. Finally, the one other thing that we had done is on our traffic continuances, when you fail to appear so the statute in Kansas 40 is shall, or in Kansas is shall, you shall suspend. So what we've done is we have continued all traffic cases that were not an accident, or DUIs, you know, those cases, the first time for 30 days, just an automatic continuance before we send the first 30-day notice. So we do kind of pick up the next, you know, probably 30–40% of folks that would have no-showed then take the second opportunity to appear.
Thank you, Judge. It looks like we have a couple questions. Judge Miller, would you like to go first?
Sure. I just wondered whether you based your program at all around the model from Birmingham, Alabama. I know they've been doing this for quite some time. Have you worked with them at all, or is this something that you generated on your own?
I wish I would have worked with them because that would have been a lot easier, but no, I generated it on my own. Basically, when we were in Kansas Legal Aid Clinic, we would give the continuances as the student lawyers, and we try to do the same thing as legal services and domestic violence cases. We actually sat in the docket. So I combined them, but yes, that would have been a lot easier just to work with Birmingham, Alabama.
I will note that on our contract with our court, appointed attorneys, they've agreed to work on driver's license restoration. We're nowhere as far advanced as your program is, but for example, our court-appointed counsel do work trying to get people's licenses back. Obviously, you have a little bit of a more of a treatment court model almost in regards to how you address it. And one other thing I wanted to mention just briefly, going back to the presentation that Jolene had, the amount of fines and fees on the City of Lawrence's budget is less than 1%. So just to put that information in context, fines and fees count for less than 1% of the City of Lawrence budget. Anyway, that's all I had. Thank you.
That's actually us too. We collect about 4 million, most of it's passed through, $400 million budget. So what CCFFJ actually says is if you're getting any pushback from your electeds, which it doesn't sound like you are, you're very lucky like us, is to actually look at prosecutions and court budgets in the context of your public safety so that you really see like we're actually only spending like 10% of that bigger part of it. But once you separate it, you know, we're kind of like a swimming pool at a country club. We're always running at a deficit, but we're the reason people are joining the country club, you know, so.
Thanks.
Taylor, looks like you're next.
Hi, yes, Taylor Jones, community member, really quick. I think this is more of a repetition piece before I know what my question is. So I'm hearing is that around every 60 to 90 days, the expectation is for someone to appear in person, to come back and check in person?
That was where we had to run it before. Going through Kansas Legal Services removes that, that requirement, so they don't have to miss so much work or come into court and have that part. So really what we were trying to build with this is to remove that requirement of every 60 to 90 days to come in. They'll just work with their attorney and the attorney will work on their behalf.
And they won't have to, and they do not have to appear with that attorney in person either?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
We have, oh, okay, never mind.
Commissioner Littlejohn, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I was just addressing, I think it was after Craven's presentation. And I just want to thank everybody for presenting and giving us all this information. It's been really useful and really illuminating. I think Commissioner Portillo was asking, I think of the city, just in the municipal side. I can't really answer to that specifically, but I can just say that just in talks with components of the city, we are in the process of looking at our fines and fees and seeing exactly, how the effect of them. Also, another plug for tonight, our city commission meeting. You'll get a chance to, see exactly our municipal services operation. So, kind of check that out a little bit more. That's pretty much all I had to say, unless Craig, you want to add anything else or?
No, other than to say Tony Wheeler was not able to be here today, and would, our team can come back and present a little more detail on this. We just didn't have enough time to get everything together and present tonight. So we'd be happy to participate in that way if it's useful, and really appreciate the information here and continued collaboration.
I always have one last thing to say. One of our successes that we have done too, just as you guys are moving forward, is looking at jail. Even though we did not have revenue, we have jail savings. So we initially, with a series of things we did, we dropped our jail revenue, I think, or what it cost by 600,000 to 800,000 in that first, and then since then we have ran at a consistent 200,000 lower than what the baseline was before. And what that is including is that is putting us into the ability where we can now revoke our domestic violence violators without hearing from the jail, our DUI violators. And then when we revoke somebody on probation, because we have the ability to not care about, you don't come out of a full revocation with a full jail sentence owing anything. We consider fines a sanction, probation a sanction, a combination of a sanction, but if you do the full sanction, you're done. We're not going to do issue any of the others. So that is something, as you guys build, was very useful for us.
I have a question in the.
Well, yeah, we normally don't take public comment on individual items but if we want to quickly move to public comment, I don't know if we've got other things we want to wrap up. I know we're running past time.
My recommendation in terms of wrap up to the group was that if the racial disparities work group could have a follow-up conversation around what would next steps look like to follow up on this conversation and then bring it back to the CJCC. That would that sound workable to folks?
I think that would be really helpful with some more structured, thoughts for the CJCC to provide feedback on in terms of recommendations. I'm seeing some head nods. It'd be nice to see a few more if that's the will of the group.
Sarah, I think that sounds great. The racial disparities work group has already been having these conversations. So to kind of follow up after this broader conversation sounds like a wonderful next step.
Great. I'm happy. I'll work on that with Matt.
Thank you.
So we're ready for public comment.
Yes. Hatim, I think you're ready.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon. First of all, I really like the input in the numbers. There's a lot of them, but the first thing I want to add, and I have the contract for municipal court for legal services. One, I feel, and I will always push, I would love to have Burt Nash mental health intakes at the Douglas County Jail. Utilize a lot of RADAC resources, which helps with drug and alcohol counseling, but Burt Nash mental health evaluations are not available. So I'd really like to add that into the mix. I think that is an invaluable tool and it's not utilized here. And I've been saying it till I'm blue in the face for years, but I think it's come due. I think we really need to get Burt Nash mental health intakes at the jail. I think it will be a tool that attorneys can use. Judge, the traffic court and child support, I really think that Kansas Holistic Defenders could utilize having an attorney at the traffic court and also child support court, just having an attorney there. With regards to municipal court, because that's what I want to focus on, I believe that the affidavits that we've discussed would be helpful with our fines that we assess for our indigent with thefts and batteries and those non-statutory fines. My big concern, and I want to add that I really believe that Judge Miller takes into account the indigency of our clients. I specifically, with my contract, only work with indigent clients. My big concern, I was just looking at the docket that I have coming up, driving while suspended third, no insurance, DUI first, those have statutory minimums. So I'd like to find out, driving while suspended third, it's huge, a $1,500 statutory fine if it meets the criteria. $1,500, DUIs $750, no insurance $300. So how do we get around that? In thinking about it, as far as I know, you have to assess statutory fines. Would it be possible to increase, Mr. Cravens had talked about community service, that we pay $10. How about we increase community service for our individuals? We have a fantastic, as far as I know, I'm practicing in other counties, we're the only one that actually has a community service resource person. It's a full-time job. I would like to see community service increase to maybe even a working wage of $15 to $20 an hour. And I believe that would be an instant tool that can be utilized by our indigent clients. Our indigent clients have no insurance. A lot of them, they have driving while suspended. I believe that that's going to be changing July 1st, where I'll be able to utilize even more hardship licenses. But sometimes they get stuck with that fine. That fine is huge. That fine gets stuck to them. A lot of Mr. Craven's statements that were made about the fines that are over $1,000, I believe a majority of those would be driving while suspended, just looking at our statistics. In how do indigent clients pay for those? I'm going to utilize, it's community service, so I'd like to see that get increased. But that's my 2 cents. I really appreciate your time.
Can I add something real quickly? This is Judge Miller. There's a legislative change on the DUI statute that takes place on July 1st that allows people to ask for some remittance of their mandatory fines and fees if they can show manifest hardship. So the legislature has addressed that somewhat. The only amount that can't be waived is the $250 surcharge that was imposed a few years back, but the rest can be.
Thank you. That's good to know.
We have, Jolene, did you want to?
Oh, just briefly, I was trying to find a statistic where I had it referenced and I couldn't find it. But at the boot camp, there was a really high percentage, I think it was in the 40s, of people with suspended licenses. This mostly had people suspended from non-payment drive anyway because they have to. I think that's what you were pointing out.
I think we've got one more public comment. Just trying to get us wrapped up. If we can get them moved over.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Sam Allison Natali from Kansas Solicitor Defenders. I will be very brief to respect everyone's time. I very much agree with the things that my brother on the defense bar, Hadam Kaheen, said about municipal court. One thing I would just add is, you know, I think that district court is very close to being the model that we want it to be in many ways. The last step, I think, being the assessment fees that Matt Cravens alluded to. If you sit in on any of these dockets, you'll see continuance after continuance where a client would want to apply for diversion, or maybe that's not even diversion, just a sentencing that needs to happen and the assessments required for sentencing. And that can't be done until an assessment is paid. And our office has been filing motions, which have been granted in the district court under the statutory authority to pay for services that are necessary for defense. Usually this is used for experts or investigators, but we've been using it to ask the court to pay for these assessment fees when the client is indigent. I can tell you that where this happened is dramatically sped up our ability to process these cases and get diversion applications in because we can get these done very early on in the case instead of waiting weeks or months for a client to put together the 175 that's necessary. And I would say that you know, we're filing these motions and we're very grateful these are being approved, but you know, I understand that this might not be a universal practice yet, and it might not be a universal practice. And we have many people who come here who don't know that that's an option for defense attorneys to be doing for their clients. So it might have to be that judges take the lead on this and make this sort of a standard practice on every domestic battery or drug and alcohol involved case to see if we can get an assessment scheduled. And I think that this ultimately would pay for itself, right? The cost of a continuance in terms of the staff time necessary would probably exceed, if we did the calculations, and I know that's a hard calculation to do, would probably exceed the 175 cost. And if we could start getting these scheduled on day one of a case, I think everybody would benefit for making that a standard practice. And so that is what we would be advocating for, to really put the bow on the progressive work that the county has already done to largely eliminate fines and fees and unnecessary delays resulting from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam and Hadam. Do we have any other comments or questions today? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. We'll see you all at the next meeting on June 14th. Thank you, everyone.